Welcome to the Defence Forces podcast, brought to you by the Defence Forces Public Relations Branch.
Hello, you're very welcome to today's special episode of the Irish Defence Forces podcast. Today I'm joined by our newly appointed Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Rossa Mulcahy. Sir, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. You're most welcome.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, sir. So the reason for this podcast, sir, is so people can get a better understanding of who you are, what your background is, and basically what your future for the Defence Force is. So without further ado, sir, I'm just going to kick into some of the questions here.
Please do, yeah.
Okay, sir. So could you please introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what age are you?
Okay, getting personal straight away. My rank, Lieutenant General Rossa Mulcahy. I'm a Lily White. Grew up just down the road here in Newbridge, and I currently live in Naas, County Kildare. My birth cert tells me I'm 57 years of age and soon to be 58. And I've been in the Defence Forces now since 1986, so coming up on 39 years in October of this year. So I've had a long and varied career in the Defence Forces and absolutely thoroughly enjoying it, and honoured and privileged to be in my current role as Chief of Staff.
Lovely, sir. Thanks very much for that. Sir, could you tell us a bit about how you got to where you are today? Could you discuss your career to date, maybe some of the appointments you've held?
Okay, all right, yeah. So as I said, I'm a signals stroke communications information services officer since commissioning. I was commissioned in 1988, and I've served in Cork, in Collins Barracks. I've served in Cathal in 2 Brigade CIS Company. I've served in the Curragh, and then for the last number of years in different appointments in Defence Force headquarters. I've been really lucky throughout my career. I've had roles inside the signals and CIS Corps and also outside it. So when I was a young officer, I spent a number of months on the border in the 28th Battalion doing border experience, as we all did back in those days during the internal security phase. I trained a platoon of recruits in the Brigade Training Centre in Cork. I trained a potential NCOs course in Cork as well. And then I went overseas in an infantry platoon commander's appointment all as a lieutenant. Then was in college and then came out, and I spent my time as a captain mostly in the Curragh. I was posted up to the signals school then, and I was responsible for, alongside others, introducing the SINGAR radio, which is our current tactical radio system. So that was a really exciting time, and went all across the Defence Forces, Navy, Air Corps and the Army, and brought in that new technology. And then I went on to become specialised in the IT area. So I worked in Defence Force HQ CIS Company for a long time, and then went overseas a number of times. So I've been to Lebanon a couple of times, been to UNSO in the Middle East, and Afghanistan was my last posting overseas, which is a good few years ago now. Unfortunately, miss overseas, and then I suppose since promotion to Lieutenant Colonel, I've spent time in strategic planning branch here in Newbridge, both as the executive officer and as director. I was director of the communications information services corps as well, as a colonel, and then I was promoted and appointed as assistant chief of staff in 2021, and I served the last 4 years doing that role, and then appointed as chief just this year in June, 1st of June this year. So a snapshot. If there's anything else you want me to cover, I'm happy to do that.
No, that's great, sir. Thanks very much for that. And did you always want to be a member of the Defence Force, sir? Was there any other jobs that you tried previous?
No. My father was in the army. I kind of grew up playing on the Curragh with friends. A lot of my friends around Newbridge their dads were in the army, and it was all dads back then. All I ever wanted to do was be in the army. And so as soon as I could, I joined the FCA as was back then. I was a member of the 6th Field Artillery Regiment over in Kildare Barracks as it was, and spent 3 summer camps there firing the 25 pounders as we did, and that just gave me a huge taste for military life. And then I was fortunate enough in 86, went for the competition and was awarded an army cadetship, and went straight in with the 63rd cadet class we were, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Ups and downs like everyone else in the Defence Forces, mostly ups, really all I ever wanted to do was be in the army, and really enjoyed my time.
Perfect. So you slightly cover our next question, okay. But the next question was, do you have much of a military background in your family? Yeah. I know you said your father was, but is this kind of a long-serving family tradition?
Yeah, my dad was the first that we know of. A lot of people ask me, like, am I related to General Richard Mulcahy? And no, not directly, but my grandfather was from Clonmel, and I know Richard Mulcahy is buried close to Clonmel in Tipperary. So there may be some distant family connection there. I haven't found it yet, but I'll keep digging. But no, my dad served for 30 years, mostly in the Curragh and in Dublin, and he served overseas. I lived overseas. I was out there as a young child when he was in the UNSO mission, and I got to relive that experience with my own family in 2005 and 2006, where we were based in Lebanon and Tyre. And my daughter's in the Defence Force now. She's an officer in the Naval Service. So that's the connection. But it all stems from my father. Yeah.
Probably so. Yeah. So you're growing your tradition now with your daughter.
Yeah.
So, sorry, is there any particular leadership figure or group that you've kind of learned from or taken motivation from throughout your career?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I suppose historically, Michael Collins would be a huge influence on I think a lot of Irish Army officers, and for his leadership role, both as a kind of an insurgent leader, but also a conventional army commander, and then in his role kind of at the political level, and how he kind of shaped the future of the state. So hugely impressed with his leadership style. So I suppose I've always had a huge draw for service in the Defence Forces, but being a CIS officer or a signals officer, I suppose, from a small technical corps, the leadership that we get is kind of it's kind of a little bit different in that you work more closely. It's like a team of teams. So the NCOs that I would have encountered as a young officer in one field CIS company or signals company as it was then, they had a huge influence on me as a young officer. And as I went through the CIS corps, the senior NCOs, their knowledge and expertise, you have to learn, you have to work together, and the officers bring a certain element to leadership role, and as do the NCOs and indeed signalmen and signalwomen. So it's a kind of a shared learning of leadership. But I think our enlisted personnel, their leadership experience is huge in shaping and forming young officers, and then helping them to become better leaders in the future. I've had role models in my service overseas. My first trip was with my company commander was an ex-naval officer who had joined the army, and he was a fantastic man, very calm under stress, and but knew how to have create a relaxed working atmosphere where people were empowered to bring their best. That was a huge influence on me when I was younger. And then laterally, I suppose, as I said, I grew up just down the road here in College Park, and just 2 doors down from us was Dermot Early, and he was in a number of roles in the Curragh and in DFHU, and then became Chief of Staff. And he would have been a huge influence on, I think, an awful lot of us as well, and his leadership style, his authentic leadership style. But he was also charismatic, and very hard to replicate charisma. But in fairness, his authentic leadership is something that really impacted on me. Yeah.
Perfect, sir. Thanks very much. And did you always think, sir, that at one stage that you were going to become Chief of Staff, or did you always dream of becoming Chief of Staff?
No. Well, sorry, I never thought it would happen. I suppose is the honest answer. Did I dream of it? Look, I'll be honest. I think everyone who comes into the army or into the Defence Forces wants to be the best they can. We are very much, we value promotion, and people strive to be their best selves. And I suppose promotion is one way of recognising that. And throughout my career, I've always tried to put myself in challenging roles and see if I can make a difference, if I can add some value to the jobs that I've taken on. And I've been really lucky in that I've been, I suppose, entrusted is a real word, with key roles and projects, and I hope that I've delivered on those. I've been in as I say, in DFHU for a long time, and I've seen how the General Staff, as it was then, and now the Defence Forces Board operate. And yeah, it was something I said, there's a challenge I'd really like to take on. But as I said at the start, did I think I'd be Chief of Staff? No, because General Clancy before me, he's a young man. He's only about a year older than me. So when he was appointed, the way the age system works in the Defence Forces, it's your date of birth becomes really important towards the end of your career. So I didn't think I'd have enough time if the opportunity ever arose, if he was to serve his full time. So when he was appointed early enough as the chairman of the European Union Committee, the landscape changed in a way, and I suppose I started really serious thinking about it then, and fortunate to have gone through the process in I think it was February of this year, and then been appointed in June. So absolutely, it's as I said at the start, it is an honour, it is a privilege, it is a challenge for sure, but it's one I hope my experience that I've learned all the way through my career, and especially the team that are working both here in Defence Force headquarters, but also out in the services, everyone is working with the same goal to make the Defence Force a better place, and it's my job to make sure that we're steering ourselves in the right direction, we're following our own transformation North Star, and that we get as much support as we can from government and others, and I know that is out there. So yeah, I'm really fortunate.
Probably, sir. And aside from being appointed as chief of staff, is there a particular standout moment or appointment that you held in your career that you can look back on and kind of point to?
Yeah, well, I've had so many, like I say, and not all command roles. Some of them are kind of overseas based, and even as a young officer. But I suppose the privileged roles I've had, I suppose, were when I was as I mentioned, Afghanistan. That was my last time overseas, so I was there. I'm not an infantry officer, so I couldn't be a battalion commander, but I was the senior Irish officer in the small mission in Kabul, the Resolute Support Mission, as it was then. But that was a huge honour for me. So a chance to kind of lead the Irish contingent that was out there. And we ended up, actually, we were the last contingent in Afghanistan at the time. So we had to go through the whole drawdown process. But to work in a 4-star headquarters at a NATO level mission, and to see how Ireland operates alongside every other nationality, and Ireland is seen as a credible player. All of the NCOs and the officers we had there, the senior generals from a number of countries couldn't have spoken more highly of the Irish officers and NCOs, and that's really empowering. You know, when you go on certain missions overseas as an Irish battalion, you don't see the impact that we have among other contingents. So that was a really privileged role. A role I suppose I'm really proud of was, I mentioned, when I was in UNSO in 2005, 2006, and we were there during the last kind of Israel-Hezbollah conflict in 2006, and it was a difficult time. We ended up having to evacuate the UN staff and kind of a number of dependents who were out in the mission area from the port town of Tyre. So it's in the UNIFIL mission area. I'm sure anyone who's been in Lebanon has been to Tyre, you know. So that was an interesting time. So we had to plan that evacuation. It was done by sea. The roads were all blocked off, and the airport had been taken out of action. So the only option was to do it by sea. So with support from the UN mission in Cyprus, we coordinated an evacuation, initially planned for about 200 UN personnel. But the word got out, and we had a number of international people who appeared at the evacuation centre, and we ended up evacuating up to just under 700 people from a harbour that wasn't meant to be designed as an evacuation point. But I was kind of charged with that evacuation mission. It was my role. I was the deputy chief of the station in OGL at the time, and that was a very proud moment. Very difficult to to deliver in trying circumstances, but the coordination of a number of the officers who were there, and also the cooperation of the local services in Tyre, it was really a positive experience, I suppose. So that's something I'll always be proud of.
Lovely, sir. Thanks very much for that. So, sir, obviously outside the Defence Forces, you're also a father and a husband, equally demanding roles, I'm sure. But how do you balance these roles, sir?
Badly. I know I'm very lucky. I've married to Lorna, and we're married actually 30 years this year in August coming up, and I've for 2 daughters. So one of my daughters, Quiva and Leisha, and they've both left home now. They're grown up, and so it's myself and Lorna living at home. We've a mad dog in our midst, and she keeps us busy. So balancing work life. I do it as best I can. So I try and keep to a routine, get home, I come into the office early, and I try and get home for dinner time, home for 6, and sometimes I take work home. We try not to, but what do we do to balance it? I love music. I love going to concerts or festivals. I love watching sport. I don't play sport anymore as such, but I did play a lot of rugby. So big rugby fan. I'd watch a lot of rugby on TV and try to go as many games as I can. And I have a set of golf clubs. Don't use them as much as I should, but I do try and play a bit of golf. And then we have a very good friend network, and we go out with friends as well. And then I've recently decided to take a bit of fly fishing, so try and do a bit of mindfulness and get out on a river somewhere. And so that's been really exciting, actually, and really enjoyable, and something different. So I'm a terrible reader, so I don't read books, which is a weakness. I do an awful lot of reading at work, but I was never a good reader, so that's something I have to try and push myself to do as well, because you have to keep learning and keep kind of adapting your leadership style and your awareness of what's going on. So that's my next personal challenge outside of work. So yeah.
So thanks very much. I suppose our next question are the members of the Irish Defence Force will be particularly interested in. Obviously, at the time of recording this podcast, the UNIFIL mandate renewal is very topical. I suppose the question on everyone's lips is we going to withdraw from UNIFIL?
Okay. Well, I'm going to give a fudge answer, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I suppose we don't know, because like you're right, the mandate is due for renewal in the end of August this year. So if the mandate doesn't roll over, well, then there is no mandate for the mission itself, and that's the worst case scenario. So we'll have to see what happens. If you're asking me to put a bet on it, I'd say the mandate more than likely will be renewed in some way, shape, or form. So and when that happens, or if that happens, we look at it and we'll see, well, what is the ask of the UNIFIL force, and what is it that Ireland can bring to the table. So we've briefed the Taoiseach, and that I suppose was in the media, and we kind of just set out what we think are the potential courses of action, as we call them, in this regard. So we'll assess that when it comes, but there's certainly a clear political direction that, and the government will decide the future of Irish service overseas, and that's right, and that's the way that we have always done our deployments overseas. So we advise the government, and then the government will decide. So if the mandate changes, we look at what the new mandate is, and how Ireland can respond or deliver capabilities, either under the existing type role or under some new or expanded role. We'll assess that, and we'll keep our people informed. But look, as Chief of Staff, members of the Defence Force Board, we absolutely understand the importance of overseas service in both developing capability, developing our personnel, testing our new equipment in a very austere environment, and testing out our TTPs and our doctrine, and that's really important, and that's not lost on any of us. The value of overseas service is we all know the history of it in the Defence Forces, largely in the Army service, but the Navy and Air Corps serve overseas as well. But it is a big important part of Army service, and it allows us to set up our operational cycle every year on how we're going to prepare the next group to go out and to develop new capabilities. So on UNIFIL, we'll know in a couple of weeks, I suppose, is the best way of saying it. But do we intend to keep a presence overseas? Absolutely. Be it on UNIFIL or other missions, it's our intention to provide overseas experience for our personnel, because it's a key part of their personal and professional development.
You mentioned sort of the historical deployments of the Defence Forces overseas, and we used to deploy to places like Chad, Liberia, the Congo. Where do you see the future of the Irish Defence Forces overseas deployments, sir?
It is evolving. It's a really good question, Tony, actually. So, the UN is challenged. It's challenged to get mandates for new missions. So I think the last mandate for a UN mission was the mission in South Sudan. That was over 10 years ago now at this stage. So any new mission that does arise in the UN perspective, it's difficult, So we've seen our involvement in European Union missions, some of the training missions in Mali, for example, and in other missions in Somalia, etc. So the European Union, the CSDP, the Common Security and Defence Policy approach to operations is evolving, and in that regard, the Defence Forces continues to play a big role in that. So our participation in the European Union, well, people call it the battle group. It's actually the rapid deployable capability is what it is. So we have a unit on standby there now, and they're in their heightened period of standby there for the next 6 months from the 1st of July. And it's those kind of missions that are probably areas that we may evolve into if there are no UN missions, So we'll stay on in UNIFIL. We'll keep our presence in positions we have in smaller missions, like where we're still in UNDOF. We still have a number of staff appointments there, and we have a presence in Kosovo in the NATO mission, and they add both kind of an experience for our personnel, but also allow people to develop themselves professionally, and as I said earlier, to test themselves in that multinational environment, and see how the Irish soldier, an officer, an NCO, how we can perform and how we can add value in those missions. So overseas is a big part of what we do, I suppose, is what I'm saying. And we will, as a board and as Chief of Staff, we will always seek to have the Irish troops involved in some kind of missions overseas. So what's the future? What might look different? We would like to see more of the Air Force of the future, and maybe the Navy of the future, having deployments overseas as well. So we had the Navy had a very successful deployment and are currently part of the Operation Irene mission in the Mediterranean. So if we get our number of ships on operational roster for home duties, we absolutely will look to get a naval service ship deployed overseas. We've got so much capability in our Air Corps and the Air Force of the future. We could have maritime patrol aircraft, operating in support of missions that are working in the Mediterranean, for example. So if we had the capacity to send a C-295 for 2 weeks or a month on a mission in support of Operation Irene, that'd be something we'll absolutely look at as well, and maybe more long-term roles for all three services. So the future is very bright. So we're on a different trajectory now in the Defence Forces than we have been in the past. So I would say everything is on the table.
Yeah, on that topic of change, sir, the Commission on the Defence Forces made a lot of recommendations in 2022. Do you believe, sir, that we're implementing these changes quickly enough?
I do, yeah. I know. Look at the maths, I suppose. So there was 130 odd recommendations in the Commission on the Defence Forces. We have 44 of them done to date, and another 16 due to finish at the end of this year. So that's 60 out of 130. That's just under 50% of the recommendations that will be completed within the first 2 years, if you want. Because while the report came out in 22, we didn't have the detailed implementation plan approved and all that for another year. So the clock really started in 23. So I think there's a huge amount of work has gone on there, and I think while people mightn't see the kind of the physical manifestation of transformation every day in the work, there's loads of evidence of it out there, and I can talk about some of that transformation, what I've seen or what I think everyone else has seen as well. But sometimes we can lose sight of what has happened in that period. But I do see the transformation is happening. It's impacting on the ground. Is it completed? Not at all. No. We have a kind of a 5-year timeline, so to 2028. That's not very far away either, So we're over halfway there at this stage, but like I say, we've had an awful lot of progress, and I think the recommendations that are going to be delivered in the future, the ones that we haven't been delivered yet, there's an awful lot of the groundwork has been put in place there. So I think the plan that we have in place is on track. There are delays. Does it cause challenges for the organisation? Of course it does. Change is difficult, and we're trying to transform the Defence Forces. Also recruit a whole series of new people into the organisation, retain the people we have, and then put people into new roles and jobs. So, and we're under strength as well, and I'm very conscious of that, as are my colleagues on the Defence Forces board. So it's really, we understand the challenges that are out there, but the change that has already happened and the change that's coming, I'm really energised by it, and I'm really excited by it, and I think we're going to see a hugely different organisation in about 4 to 5 years' time.
Probably, sorry, yeah. And as you said, sorry, a lot of things are changing at the moment, and I suppose in modern day society, the likes of cyber, artificial intelligence, drones are becoming more prevalent, and I suppose more dangerous in the modern day society. What are the Defence Forces doing to combat this?
Okay, so on the cyber side, so we have a new Cyber Defence Command stood up. We have the first general took up the role last year. We've established a cyber planning unit as well, with led by a colonel, and our first female sergeant major in the army. Sandra Murphy is leading that on the enlisted side, and they're starting to build up their capability. So under the Commission's report, it said a unit of about 100 personnel, and we've started to onboard both military and civilians. We're taking on civilians into those roles as well, which is absolutely in line with the transformation agenda. So that'll give us a kind of our first time formally in a new domain of warfare. So we've heard of the 5 domains: the land, air, maritime, space, and cyber. We mightn't have any space dedicated space capability, but we certainly in the cyber side, we have a high level of ambition there. So that's absolutely happening. You mentioned AI. So AI is going to have an impact across all of society, and of course in militaries as well. So we've two I suppose a number of new roles that I mentioned there about civilians, but we have a head of strategic HR, and we have a head of transformation who's leading on the Commission on Defence Forces implementation. I should have mentioned that earlier. So that's a huge change in itself, So, but we also have a digital transformation officer. So that's a colonel. Came in with an open competition, again, something new that we hadn't done in the Defence Forces. And their role, that both the Digital Transformation Officer, Colonel Griffin, and the Head of Transformation, Assistant Secretary Brian Malloy, they're looking at this. So we're standing up first of all, I suppose it's the nascent step, the baby steps, is to establish a data unit. So how do we gather all the data streams that we have, and then we're going to start applying different tools and kind of both business intelligence tools. But we've looked at the artificial intelligence area as well, and there's huge opportunity to employ artificial intelligence across the defence forces now, but more so in the future. So what we know from modern life and from certainly modern warfare is the amount of data that our sensors harvest, what we have available to us on our smartphones in our hands as well. It's absolutely astronomical, and you can't process all that data in a quick and meaningful way. So the use of artificial intelligence, data analytics, quantum computing, all those things, they can absolutely assist us in the future. Are we there yet? No, we're not. But are we looking at it? Absolutely, we are. And that's something that I see will have a huge impact across the defence forces. And I think it'll be seen by every single soldier, sailor, aircrew in the organisation, where you'll have more power, digitalisation, engaging with the defence forces through smartphones, through new technologies that we're going to bring into in the future, and we're going to see those rolled out next year with, for example, the Working Down Directive, and I can talk about that as well maybe later on. So I hope that answers your question. I didn't mention drones. Sorry. So yeah, you asked me about drones, and look, there's been huge learnings from the experience in Ukraine, and drones have now become a kind of a different type of weapon, and they've changed not the nature of war but the character of war, and how kind of simple off-the-shelf commercial technology can have both an impact in how operations are conducted and how warfare is prosecuted. So are we looking at that? We are, absolutely. So you'll hear politicians or the media talking about the radar program. So the radar is a program. So it's not just kind of a radar device, a radar head as we call them, that is looking at aircraft that are operating in our skies. It's also supported by a ground-based air defence system of the future, and a kind of a coastal radar system of the future, and a counter UAS system of the future. So you mentioned what are the threats. Well, we're looking at that, and we're actively pursuing those kind of streams of the radar program. So that's going to be a new technology that we haven't had in the past, but we are very much aware of the threat that drones pose. Any of us who's served overseas, particularly in Lebanon, we will be familiar with the impact of drones, both as a kind of a kinetic weapon, but also as a kind of they can have a psychological impact on people. This kind of and that's been a lesson from Ukraine, where you have these very low grade generation drones that are just loitering in the area, and people don't know where it's going to attack. It's like a psychological weapon. So we absolutely have to develop a capability where we can defeat those drones, but also have a capability where we can use drones to enable our operations on land, in the air, and at sea, and not just the kind of the quadcopter drones. We're talking about remotely piloted aircraft systems, ORPAS, etc. So, like I say, there is a high level of mission as to what the defence forces will operate in the future, and that's one area that is certainly has changed how militaries have to operate.
Lovely, sir. We've talked a lot, sir, about the kind of higher level changes that are occurring in the defence forces, but I just want to ask, how does this translate to the soldier on the ground? How would you appeal, sir, to a soldier of 10 years with a specialised skill set who's constantly being maybe overworked, overtasked, and manually selected far too often? So what would be your appeal to them to stay in the defence forces?
I suppose it's the amount of change that's coming, and like I said, I'm absolutely aware of the challenges that are out there, and I suppose you just have to look at the numbers, and we have a significant shortfall in personnel, and that means that people have to kind of do their own job and oftentimes do additional work, and I am extremely mindful of that. It is a challenge. I'm not being flippant when I say that, but you've asked me why should someone stay. I suppose there's a number of things, right? So I mentioned about the transformation journey we're on. So what's the goal here? It's to become a modern employer, a workplace that is modern in nature, and that we are a kind of an employer and a workplace of choice for our personnel. So we've some of the changes we've seen already. So you asked me like, what does it mean for the individual person? So we've changed our clearance standards. I see you're sporting a very fine beard there, so that's a small thing, but it's a big thing. We have Working Down Directive. So what's the Working Down Directive going to bring? It's going to bring a kind of a management and a measurement of the amount of hours that our personnel work. So it'll kind of say, here's the actual hours that I worked, rather than people saying that we're overworked. So it's if I do work more than I should be, there's a mechanism in place of protections, as they call them, where people will be given time off in lieu and given a chance to recover and reset. So that's a hugely important thing, and that's going to get more and more embedded in the Defence Forces as the new time and attendance module, which we're about to sign a contract with the company in the coming month, and that will start to roll out later on this year. And then, as I said, some of the user experience that people have is they might be able to see what their hours are worked on their smartphones or in various stations across the Defence Forces in barracks, and have an idea of how their work patterns are going. But what's the attraction piece, I suppose, to stay in the Defence Forces is that transformation that's coming. So most of my time in the Defence Forces from the mid 80s, 90s was all about reductions in size, reductions in this, reduction in that. We're now talking about expansion. So we're growing the force. We're going up already. So we've gone beyond the kind of establishment of the Defence Forces was 9,500. Now we have an additional 250 roles that have been created to do new commission and transformation roles across the Defence Forces. So that's the change that's coming. So if I was a young person in the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force of the future, like even that title alone, Air Force, its signals change. There's new capabilities that are coming. There's going to be new roles for the Defence Forces. Overseas, you've asked me about already, but national defence is going to become more and more important. That's what you're hearing across Europe now. Countries are starting to focus on national defence. So what is the role that the Army, the Navy, not the Naval Service, the Navy and the Air Force of the future will have to do? It will be different to what we do now, and we will be equipping our personnel with not only new uniforms, new weapon system, new platforms. So we're looking at bringing in a whole suite of a new aircraft fleet, a new helicopter fleet, a new balanced fleet for our naval service, a new armour fleet for our army of the future, including kind of new light tactical vehicles up to armour vehicles. I mentioned ground-based air defence already. Like, that's all unheard of, and the money that is needed for that is coming. We had the announcement of the National Development Plan by the government there recently, and it shows a significant increase in the amount of money that the Defence Forces will have available to procure all those new equipments and platforms. But I suppose that's the hard part of it. What's the soft side of it for someone to stay? I mentioned about the workplace environment, so that's really important too. So we have a new head of HR. So some of the priorities are to make a career in Defence Forces more meaningful. We've done huge work on the education that we provide our personnel. So our Be More kind of recruitment campaign, you can come in with any kind of level of education and develop yourself in whatever way you want, whatever you think is the best way for you. You have to work hard at it, and seek those opportunities. But those opportunities are there, and you can make yourself be more in the Defence Forces. But also, I suppose areas that I want to focus on will be around improving our appraisal system. So how we recognise the performance of our personnel, that they feel that the work that they do is accredited to them, and that we look at that. And that's all part of the transformation change, to bring in new promotion systems to allow people to have access to roles that they may not have had before, and a whole range of other retention initiatives to make sure that we value the people that we have in the Defence Forces, and we make it really difficult for them to say, actually, I don't want to leave the Defence Forces. I want to stay. I can see the changes coming, and I want to be part of that. And that's really exciting, really energizing for me. And I hope that people can see that change that's coming, and get a sense of that kind of potential that's there. Like I've used the word opportunity. There are so many opportunities coming for the Defence Forces that anyone who stays is going to have a really, really long and exciting career in this organisation. And I suppose the big change would be the uncertainty around how long can I serve in the Defence Forces. You can now serve till you're 62 years of age. That gives people a level of certainty. So I can say, okay, I can plan out my career now. I know, can I settle down and buy a house, or can I do this? Those kind of things weren't as certain before with the different ages that people have to retire. I think that's a huge benefit for all of us in the Defence Force, that everyone knows they can serve until a certain age now, and they can then plan their career in the future and see, these are the opportunities I want to go after, and then hopefully that they get the support from their leadership team, but also their colleagues working around them, that they can realise those opportunities.
You mentioned all the opportunities, sir. And as a result, the members of the Defence Force are highly skilled, highly trained, which also makes them very attractive to external companies. Is there anything we're doing or putting in place to kind of stop the members of the Defence Forces being poached by external companies?
Well, like I say, the goal of any organisation is to make people feel valued so much that they want to stay rather than leave the organisation, and that's down to the leadership of the organisation. That's down to me to make sure that happens. And so we have to give people like a realistic work experience that's at home and overseas, development or opportunities to develop themselves. I said that as well. But I suppose what does that mean? Like I've been an advocate for developing retention strategies in the Defence Forces for the last couple of years. So we have really strong recruitment targets going, and that's going to bring in new lifeblood into the organisation. But the most important thing we have to do is to retain the people that we have currently serving, because the experience they've built up, no matter how long they're in the organisation, once you've done 4 to 5 years in this Defence Force, you're an expert in something, and you are a valuable member of the Defence Forces, and you have a range of capability skill sets that really are difficult to replace. So we don't want to lose anybody from the Defence Forces. So you asked me, what is that retention strategy? So I mentioned some of them there. So like the working on directive is a key retention strategy. It's going to hopefully make people feel valued, that there is a kind of a budget to the number of hours that they can be worked. And there are difficult choices coming for us as commanders in the future as to what tasks we give our personnel based on the hours they work. I mentioned promotion and the performance appraisal systems as well, but we're developing our retention strategy. So we've engaged the external consultants. Deloitte are working with us on a range of human resource J1 type projects, and the retention strategy is the next one that's coming down the track, and that will set out clear goals for how we can make sure that people in the organisation, they feel valued and they feel that they can the services or the output that they deliver for their unit, for their branch, their service, their corps is recognised, and they can see that how that is making adding up to provide for the defence of the state. So I suppose the most easy manifestation of that is in the area of pay. So we've had some early wins in that with regard to the Commission on Defence Forces I mentioned. So the equalisation of the military service allowance for new entrants, I know that's now in place, but that was an important thing to show that we value all of our people equally. There's not a case of one person is on one level of military service allowance and someone else is on another. So I think that was important. And the entry pay that we have for our personnel is attractive. So it's making sure that we are an attractive employer. It's making sure that the pay can grow throughout a person's career in the Defence Force. So if I'm going to stay till 62, that I can see that pay increment going. So that's my big challenge, is to find out how can we deliver on that. So some of the areas that were mentioned in the Commission on Defence Forces report were things like the long service increment, so that's something that we're working hand in glove with the Department of Defence in. And I suppose the most immediate one that I would say that will hopefully provide value to people is we have the latest iteration of the public sector pay agreement, and there's a process called local bargaining. So each of the representative associations, PD4 for the enlisted personnel and RACO for the officers, they have gotten a kind of a percentage of the pay for their personnel that they, in consultation with the Department of Defence and us in the Defence Forces, will look at how we can provide that out to provide incentives for people across the organisation to stay. So that's at a very advanced stage. I can't say what those areas are just yet.
So you mentioned a lot of the improvements that have come into effect in the Defence Forces in the recent past. Could you talk any more on some of the improvements that have occurred and some that are likely to occur in the very near future?
Okay. We've got the healthcare equalisation as well for enlisted personnel and officers. Like it's really important, We've got a huge amount of investment going on in our infrastructure, so I don't think there's any barracks in the country that doesn't have some kind of building either started, completed, or planned for next year, and that's showing a kind of a step change in how we do things. We've seen new equipment come in, so in the Air Corps we've seen new PC-12, so those kind of I-Star aircraft. We've got the new maritime aircraft that I mentioned earlier, the C-295s. And then in the naval service, we've got the new inshore patrol vessels. On the army side, we introduced the software-defined radio. That's been rolled out. The Battle Group are the first group to kind of utilise that in a kind of an operational setting, and we also have a number of other kind of projects that are coming to fruition. So we're about to announce the new body armour, the IMBAS project. They're kind of step change approaches that everyone can see. I suppose all of us out there in the organisation can see. I should have mentioned as well the Office of Reserve Affairs. So that's another huge development for the Defence Forces. So it's kind of the single force concept that we had heard about in the past was kind of been left to local units to manage, and how to integrate the reserve force into the defence forces. But the establishment of that Office of Reserve Affairs, which is staffed by all three services and by RDF personnel, that's led to a big change in how we approach our integration of the RDF into service with the Defence Forces, and we've seen an increase in induction there. That's been really incredible, and we've also seen a change in the ability of RDF personnel to serve overseas. They're like, you shouldn't underestimate the importance of that to our RDF personnel. It's really important that they contribute to the work and the outputs of the entire Defence Forces, and they're absolutely willing and ready to do that. Some of the new things that are coming in the future, I did mention Cyber Command earlier. That's one that's in active development, and we're starting to see new civilians coming on stream. And also, I've mentioned some of the future platforms that we'll see. So for the Army, it'll be a new armour fleet, and that'll come in a couple of years' time. So we have a dedicated board looking at what the new APCs of the future will be. It's likely that they'll be kind of a mix of different variants. It won't be just for infantry. It'll be cavalry. It'll be engineers potentially, and artillery. We have to go through that design process. We're going to bring in the new sniper and dedicated marksman's rifle. They're really important pieces of equipment as well. In the naval service, I mentioned about the balanced fleet. So we've got the new subsea domain awareness, the towed sonar capability. That's coming in 26, 27. So they're going to place new demands on the Defence Forces. So both to deliver those systems, but in the skill sets and the competencies that our personnel will have to allow those systems to be integrated, and to add, as I said earlier, to the whole national defence of our state at home, and then what we can bring on our overseas missions as well. You asked me about the digitalisation piece. That's a huge part of this programme. So we're going to see a kind of step change in the experience that our personnel have with how they can interact with the Defence Forces. So can I apply for leave on my smartphone? That's something we hope to look at as part of the future change. So to make people feel more involved and be able to track their progress in a more digitally kind of aware and digitally enabled environment. We've made huge changes as well in our force design. That's one area I didn't talk about, I suppose. So that's one of the big changes that's coming in the future. So we have force design teams that are looking at what the future Navy, Air Force and Army will look like. The Cyber Command I mentioned already, they're doing that separately. And also we're looking at planning for how we're going to have a joint command as well. So these are all new things that we don't have. So really exciting. The plan is that those kind of broad kind of concepts of what the future forces would look like, that's hopeful. I'm hoping that we'll have those plans in place, ready to brief to the Minister towards the end of this year, and then we can go about in the next coming years to put those plans in place and to see the new forces take shape. But one of the ones that we have seen take shape is our new intelligence service. So most people in the Defence Forces will have heard of J2. That was the old name for intelligence, but it's now called the IMIS, the Irish Military Intelligence Service. And that's we've seen a steps change in that across the Defence Forces. So we have a new kind of a school established. They're running intelligence courses, and we have a state-of-the-art intelligence HQ within the Defence Forces as well. So again, a huge amount of change has already happened and is coming in the future. And I hope that the young officers, NCOs and soldiers, sailors and aircrew out there can see that as this is what's coming down the track, and that they can be an active part of that. And I really would like to see them being involved in the design of those as those new projects are delivered and implemented.
Is there anything in particular, sir, that you are hoping to achieve during your tenure as Chief of Staff?
Yeah. So Chief of Staff is, I suppose, the key word there. So it's my job is for 2 years, for a minimum of 2 years, up to 5 years. So the plan is that role will change to the Chief of Defence role, and that will be when there's new legislation brought about. So that could be in 2 years, could be sooner, So I'm kind of looking at this in kind of two phases. So my first 2 years, and then a beyond the 2 years phase. So what do I want to achieve in that? I want to see kind of a big change in how we're doing, and that change is happening already. I've kind of alluded to that, but I suppose the force design piece for me is a key pillar of that. That if we can deliver a force design that's approved by the Minister and by government, that will see that will put the groundwork in place that will see how the defence forces of the future is rolled out. And like our vision is to be a joint and agile defence forces, a fit for purpose force that's postured to defend our state. So that's a step change way of how government is looking at what the defence forces can bring in the future. So the force design piece is really important. That we have an army, we have a navy, and we have an air force who can deliver on national defence at sea, in the air, and from the land. And that's really important. And I'm just talking again. I use that word national defence. That's the lens we're looking through now. It's how do we defend Ireland, the state, and then when we can do that, how can we deliver capability and work on missions overseas as well? That's the add-on piece, if you want. Not the other way around. So that's the baseline work. I mentioned earlier about the kind of work environment and what the future experience is for personnel. So I really want to see that people can recognize, can see the change that is being put in place, and that they feel valued and part of the organisation. So I mentioned about performance appraisal system and the promotion system. They're the next two priority areas I want to focus on. I really think that they will give a step change approach in how so the performance appraisal, that's where every individual will be given a kind of here's your goals for the year. And then at the end of the year, I'm going to assess you on the goals I gave you and did you deliver on them, and give you an opportunity to work on that together. We haven't done that in the past, and it will allow people to see what are the areas I want to focus on, how can I develop myself personally and professionally, and how can I deliver those outputs that enable the entire defence forces. And then on foot of that, then we'll have a new, hopefully, promotion system or systems, so something different to what we have now that's more transparent and allows people to have every opportunity that they can when they've done all the courses and have made themselves eligible for those competitions, that they can see themselves get promoted up through the organisation, because that's a huge part of us and how we value our personnel and how people feel valued. I do not underestimate the importance of the promotion system and how it makes people feel included and valued by the organisation. And it's really important that we have an open and transparent promotion system. And I suppose other areas that I'd like to see us developing is, for me, I mentioned all about the future platforms that we see not only in the HR space, but also in the real delivery of new symbols, symbolic things. So a new uniform, new helmet, new imbas. That'll be a seismic change or a big deliverable for the army. Then we have the APCs. I mentioned the new aircraft. We talk about super medium helicopters, how they can work in support of the Navy and the Air Force and Special Forces. We need to use that national defence lens. And then I mentioned about the Navy of the future, how they're going to operate integrated with the Army and the Air Force, and how we can deliver better national security. And I suppose another big area for me to try and work on in the next 2 years is the area of the pensions for our post-2013 personnel. So to overcome that anomaly that's there from when you retire at 62 to when you become eligible for the state pension, to overcome that gap. That's a key priority for me, and I'll work with the Secretary General to try and overcome that in the coming years as well. So they're my priorities for the first 2 years. And then if we go beyond that into 2027 onwards, I'll reset the plan, but we'll be into the implementation of bringing the new Army to life, bringing the new Navy to life, and the new Air Force to life, coupled with our joint headquarters and our strategic headquarters, and those opportunities that are there for young NCOs, young soldiers, young officers, and senior personnel as well, to work outside of their organisation in a joint environment where you're integrated with different services, you have a different experience. We'll be bringing in civilian personnel. That's something we're going to really work towards as well in the coming years. And then also integrating our Reserve Defence Force. There's a huge amount of capability that's out there in our Reserve Defence Force who can empower, enable, and make our operations far better. And that's something, as I said earlier, the work of the Office of Reserve Affairs and our reserve personnel, that they are included. And when I say valued by the organisation, that their contribution at home and hopefully overseas as well, that we see a step change. So that's what I would like to see that me as Chief of Staff prioritise in the coming years.
Perfect, sir. And I suppose my final question to you, a nice big broad one. What's your vision for the Defence Forces?
So the vision is what we've agreed with what government have agreed to, So, but I was intimately involved in designing that vision with colleagues from Strategic Planning Branch and the Defence Forces Board. So I mentioned what it was earlier. So it's the to be a joint agile force, fit for purpose and posture to defend our state. So that's the vision that government have bought into. So to our personnel, the vision is that we defend our state. I've used that kind of national defence line. It's our state to transform our force, and we've spoken a lot about transformation and valuing our people. They're things that we've both spoken about in the last while. So, but what I like about the vision is the word "our" is used in each of those pieces. So, transform our force, value our people, defend our state. So, what I want to see, what I can add to the vision is the agency piece, so that we all feel included in that. And I kind of said that in my opening address when I introduced myself to the Defence Forces. We should all feel part of that. We should all take ownership of that and see this as an opportunity. There's an opportunity for us as individuals to develop ourselves, but there's an opportunity for us, the Defence Forces, to take this chance once in a lifetime, once in a generation is the kind of phrase that people have used, to bring a new Defence Forces that will empower or provide for the defence of the state, to enable the resilience of the country, and to provide that security, the economic security that will allow the country to thrive in economic as an economic powerhouse in Europe. And that's the role the Defence Forces can play, to provide that baseline security assurance that we are credible actors both at home and overseas. So the our piece is really important. And I suppose the other areas that I'll focus on is being as agile as possible. So trying to make that change happen as quickly as possible by cutting through as much of the red tape as we can within reason, and to make sure that we keep that momentum going. Momentum in this is really important, that all of these small changes that I've mentioned earlier, all these new things that we brought about, they have a snowball effect, and I think they're going to come to real fruition once you see the force design piece coming out, this new equipment coming on stream, and us doing new things, being involved in new missions or new training exercises or new types of roles at home and overseas. That's where that all this piece will come together, and we'll see that vision playing out in the coming years. So hope that answers your question.
It does, sorry. Yeah, thanks very much. So that concludes the podcast. I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to come on the podcast. Thank you for being so honest and open. It was a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And look, I've said to all our senior leaders that it's summertime. I'm really conscious of the fact that we're halfway through the year. People have put a huge amount of effort in over the last couple of years, both at home and overseas. It's a really important time to take a bit of time off, to recover, reset, enjoy the time with family and friends. I know I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going off on holidays for a couple of weeks to Kerry, and I can't wait to go down there. And it's important to reset, take time, and then come back energized and refreshed. And I hope everyone gets a chance to enjoy some time with family and friends, home, abroad. Be safe, have a bit of fun away from the Defence Forces, and then come back energized and get stuck in for the rest of the year. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for that, sir. That concludes today's special edition of the Irish Defence Forces podcast with Lieutenant General Rossa Mulcahy, our newly appointed Chief of Staff. This podcast will be available on all platforms where you get your podcast. Please keep an eye out on Defence Forces social media for a new series of the podcast coming soon. Thank you very much.